I know you've got an ear out for the start of the podcast, but before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to remind you to keep an eye out for Darryl Lee's limited edition Christmas treats, because they're in stores now. Like the iconic Christmas nougat pudding, so yummy and a gorgeous little gift. And some delicious Chrissy-themed twists on your favourite treats, like the Darryl Lee Rockley Road with chewy red and green jelly pieces, green and red crunchy milk chocolate balls, my favourites, and green apple and strawberry flavoured licorice. Watch them disappear. Your Christmas treats table will pop with colour and scrumptiousness. Spread some joy, bring the fun, and enjoy the Christmas tradition that is Darryl Lee. Hurry before they sell out. Darryl Lee makes Christmas better.
Looking for a new career? Welcome to Do HVAC Training Service Center in North Charleston. Enroll today in our comprehensive HVAC training hands-on field experience-based program, covering troubleshooting, maintenance, installation, and more on various HVAC systems and ductwork. We offer EPA and NAEP preparation and testing, along with various certifications. Enjoy payment options. Achieve certification in under 5 months. Enroll now for your new journey of skill development and career advancement. Log on to dewhvactrainingsc.com to inquire.
Welcome to The Five of My Life with me, Nigel Marsh. As an author, ad man and theologian, I've always been interested in people's stories. Not just those with a high profile, but people from all walks of life, regardless of fame. Which is why I created this show. Each guest who takes the Five of My Life challenge chooses a favourite film, book, song, place and possession. They tell me their choices in advance so I can research them, but they don't tell me why they've chosen them. That's the subject of our conversation. It's amazing what you can learn when discussing someone's 5 choices. I hope you enjoy listening to the show as much as I enjoy making it. Leader of the Australian Labor Party, Anthony Albanese, was a delight when he took the Five of My Life challenge. Often surprising, Anthony revealed, amongst other things, his admiration for the Queen and his respect for Senator Jackie Lambie in this warm and wide-ranging conversation. So, Anthony, welcome to the Five of My Life.
Thanks for having me on the program.
Now, I have to ask you, mate, how did you find the challenge, the process of choosing your 5? Was that easy, difficult?
Oh, always difficult to go through what your favourite thing is, because the truth is that it varies from day to day, particularly with music, depending upon your mood. I think you can feel like a particular song is your favourite song at a particular point in time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what we try and do on the Five of My Life is we don't make it the favourite. It's just a favourite that enables guests to talk about an interesting area of their life. And you're going to take us through a journey through the 70s, 80s and 90s. And we always start with the film.
Showing my age.
You chose them, mate.
Indeed.
But before we start, my friend Sophie has got a question, which it feels moronic, but I've promised her I will ask you. Whereas she has got friends in Puglia, and she says that I pronounce your name wrong. And it rhymes with sneeze. And I go, no, it doesn't. It's Anthony Albanese. But so I just want to put that to rest so I can say to Sophie, no, I've asked the bloke himself and it's...
No, well, both are actually wrong. So Albanese is essentially an anglicisation of the name.
Right.
Albanese is closer, but it's actually Albanese.
Ah, well, I'm so glad I asked.
But Albanese is pretty close, but you're always in Italian. The reason why the language sings is because you always say the vowels at the end. But no one says spaghetti bolognese, do they? They say, so...
Well, listen, thank you for clearing that up. And the Italian theme is a good link to your first choice, because we're going to the 1972 Francis Ford Coppola Oscar-winning classic, The Godfather. Tell us on Five of My Life why you've chosen that.
Well, because it is just such a fantastic story. And, of course, it has some of the greatest actors of all time. Any movie with De Niro and Pacino in it has to be loved. And it has, I think it just tells a story of migration. It tells a story about poverty in Italy and in New York. It tells a historical drama, and it's got great acting. Coppola is, of course, a genius, and I love all of the Godfather movies. Somewhat controversially, I know that some of them, Godfather 3, Cops Are Panning, I like it as well. I just think occasionally I will, during summer holidays and times like that, I'll watch them over and over again, and you can never get bored with them. There's always something happening. There's emotional drama, there's internal family feuds and rivalries, as well as, of course, the backdrop of the great city of New York.
So do you think, obvious question, but are there parallels to politics with the harsh world of the mafioso?
Well, it is pretty harsh, isn't it? So from time to time, hopefully in politics, people just get knocked off metaphorically rather than actually. But I think Australian prime ministers, for a while there, we went through a time where for 5 mid-elections in a row, we had a prime minister replaced by their own party. So there is a certain similarity in terms of rivalry, and sometimes politics can be very brutal, but fortunately not as brutal as some of the scenes in The Godfather.
I've got a mate who left Australia for a period of years and came back. And the Prime Minister, I won't mention any names, was the same Prime Minister when he left, and he had missed out all the drama in between. So,
that was obviously Kevin Rudd. It must have been.
So he goes, what are you talking about, Nigel? There's no change. Very good. Well, listen, we're going to move to the 90s, and you've chosen one of my favourite books. It's the third book, first novel from Nick Hornby, the best-selling, over 1 million copies. It was turned into a film, a musical, and a TV series. It's High Fidelity. It's a bit of a favourite here at Five My Life because part of the central drama is the bloke creates lists of 5 things. Why have you chosen it?
That is why I picked it. Because one of the great things about the book is, he goes through, the 5 best Motown songs between 1960 or 1965. He goes through, he just makes lists. And when I was much younger and had more spare time, I used to do that as well. I used to make lists of what my top 10 albums of all time were, or my top 10 songs of all time, my favourite 5 or 10 Beatles songs of all time, my favourite Stones songs, best Australian music songs, and we still kind of do it for Triple J's Hottest 100. I participate every year with my top 10 songs of the year, and then people all participate and they wait for the time when it goes on and what number one will be. Somewhat controversially this year it was the Wiggles. But I think Nick Hornby is a great writer. I think About a Boy is fantastic, and he writes also from a male perspective. They're very much books written by a bloke, and I think they're easy to read. They're interesting. They're full of characters. I was a bit disappointed, I've got to say, with the series. I didn't love the series. I loved the movie, but not the series.
Did you read Fever Pitch, the previous one?
I did. All about some of that, you see, as someone who's a fan of English football, but not up to au fait with all of the details, but I related totally to the passion and the obsession as someone who was on the board. I was of South Sydney Rugby League Football Club. So that passion and that identification that people have with their football team, with who they are, and with their family. And I used to say, when people would say to me, "Oh, does your son follow South?" And I'd say, yes, he had choices, but he chose to sleep inside. I relate very much to the passion that comes through in Fever Pitch. I think Fever Pitch might have been the first Nick Hornby book that I read. I'm not sure in what order I read them, but they're all fantastic.
Yeah, just fantastic. And the thing about Fever Pitch that, I mean, I think is genius is him tapping into, being a sports fan is all about your team losing, not all about your team winning. I mean, they might win every now and then, but it's all about, if you're a real fan, it's about permanent disappointment.
Exactly. Well, South didn't win a comp between 1971 and 2014. And when I was on the board for a number of years, we never made the finals once. So it meant that when you had a win, it was like you'd won the comp. It was a very, very big deal.
High Fidelity, which I've got a lot of admiration for that book. It's basically a journey of self-discovery. So I'm going to lob a softball question at you. And so what's the most useful mistake you've ever made? The biggest mistake that had the most learning for you?
Oh, gee, that's a tough question.
It's a softball question.
It's not a softball question. It's a tough question. Oh, gee, you make a lot of mistakes through life's journey. I look back at various things that I did, certainly in sport, I made lots of mistakes, but in politics and in life, I think you make so many over the years. The important thing is to learn from them. I think that's the key. My mentor was a fellow called Tom Uran, who was a minister who I worked for in the Hawke government, and he was a former POW of the Japanese for 4 years. He went on his tour, as he called it, through Timor and Changi and the Burma-Siam Railway, and then was in Japan, close to where the second atomic bomb dropped on Nagasaki. And he used to have two things he drummed into me. One was, you've got to learn something new every day. The second is, you've got to be a better person every day, and you've got to grow. And I think we all make mistakes. It's by learning from them that is important.
Yeah, I love that. Well, we're going to move to the 80s for your song on Five of My Life, and we'll make sure it's on the Five of My Life Spotify playlist. But you are in good company, mate, because Chris Mitchell, the long-standing editor of the Australian newspaper, chose it on Five of My Life as well. And last week, Keanu Reeves was on Stephen Colbert, and he was asked, if you only had one song you could play for the rest of your life, what would it be? And he chose it. The New Musical Express in 2002 declared it the greatest single of all time. It's Love Will Tear Us Apart by Joy Division. Tell us why you chose that.
Well, it is just such a fantastic song, and it evokes emotion. I remember the first time I heard Joy Division, I went into a record store and one of those old setups with vinyl, and you put the headsets on, and I had heard about this band, and I played Unknown Pleasures, the first album, and just was blown away by how different it was and how innovative, because I was told it was the punk era and you had the Clash and Sex Pistols, and you had the emergence of this sound largely from the UK, and in Australia you had bands like Radio Birdman and the Saints. Indeed, the Saints were before the Sex Pistols. So I just didn't expect it. I expected to hear something that was more punkish.
Sure.
And it was raw. The bass guitar is just phenomenal. And then I got a hold of listening to everything that I could. And it's interesting that the two singles, Transmission is fantastic, but Love Will Tear Us Apart, which is just an extraordinarily powerful song, and it has a uniqueness about it. It's not derivative of anything. But if you listen to New Order in their later years, and I saw them just a couple of years ago at the Sydney Opera House, of all places, you then go back and listen to Joy Division and you hear the continuity which is there. And I think that the fact that Joy Division, coming out of the punk era, and Ian Curtis and the whole tragic story, there's a fantastic movie, I can't remember what it's called, about Joy Division that has lots of original footage of them live, and it's just an awesome movie as well. I think it's one of the best movies about rock music that I've seen, and it's just a great song.
There are some things in life that have, however tragic, such incredible authenticity, where the poor bastard was breaking up with his wife, writing a song saying love will tear us apart, and then he kills himself, and then because love has torn him apart, and then they release the song, and you go, blimey, that's not some pop music confection, that's a bloke's he's bleeding onto the guitar, basically.
That's real. And then you have later bands like I DJ occasionally. I used to do it a lot more, and I deliberately will play Joy Division, Love Will Tear Us Apart, then New Order, Blue Monday, which are both, the thing about Love Will Tear Us Apart is, as much as it's a tragic song, it's a great song to dance to.
Yeah.
And then Blue Monday is you cannot stand still if Blue Monday is playing. And then I play the Wombats, Let's All Dance to Joy Division and Celebrate the Irony, which is just a good bit of fun.
Yeah, I love it. Now, I need to ask you a question that you hopefully can help me. I've always had an issue with the band's name, and I don't know how to resolve that. So I feel slightly guilty. Do you know where the name comes from?
No, I don't, actually.
Well, I am slightly nervous in telling you because I don't want to spoil it for you. But it's awful. In 1955, a Holocaust survivor wrote a book called The House of Dolls. And it's about, unfortunately, the truth of the Germans in the concentration camps had divisions of women who were forced into enslaved prostitution for the SS.
Yeah.
And they were called Joy Divisions. Oh my
really?
God, yeah. And so that's where they got the name from. And I mean, I didn't know that for years.
Well, I wish I didn't.
Well, I'm so sorry to tell you. But the thing
is very dark, isn't
it's
it? But
awful.
Everything about the band was so dark.
Yeah, and obviously they were just trying to choose the most shocking name they can, and blah blah blah. But it leads on to, I mean, it's for probably for a different podcast than this. But you go, gosh, where does the line for cancel culture be drawn? Because that is a brilliant song by a brilliant band, and then you don't know the story I've just told, as in I didn't know it until 10 years ago, and then you go, well, now I do know it. Do I now no longer like the song? And you go, well, no, of course I like the song. I've always liked it. So there you go. I'm sorry for giving you that piece of dark background.
You should edit that out of the podcast just for the sake of the listeners, I think, so that they can continue to enjoy it. But they were so dark.
Oh, it's horrid.
Band. And the film I'm talking about, I wish I remember what it was called, is very dark as well. But out of that, New Order is happy, uplifting music, but it's essentially the same band or the same nucleus of the band, of course, without the lead singer.
Well, listen, we're going to change the tone to a much more uplifting tone because we're coming to your place on Five of My Life, and you have chosen Bronte Beach in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. Tell us about that, mate.
Well, Bronte Beach is a place where my mum used to take me when I was a kid. We didn't have a car. I grew up in a single-parent household. It was just me and mum. And they had at Bronte Beach has quite a large parkland around, and it then has, it's a nice beach, but the beach also has a little rock pool down one end as well as ocean baths. So for little kids, it's fantastic in terms of you can swim in the ocean safely with no risk of drifting out to sea as happens, or no risk of a shark or anything happening. It's a nice, safe place. But they also have a little train that goes around, like for real little kids, 3-4-year-olds sitting in the train. And it's just such an institution. And you could catch the bus there and you can sit on the grass and get takeaway fish and chips, have a little playground. It's a lovely beach. And it just evokes me of my childhood and just good times and pleasant memories with my mum, and with sometimes we would meet cousins or friends there. And you could there's little like huts as well where you could have birthday parties and things like that there. So it's really a nice childhood memory of a time when time moved a little bit slower than it does these days in my life.
Yeah, do you know what? I have to confess we are brothers from another mother, because I spent 2 or 3 very happy years taking my twin daughters on that train. We would go and do exactly. You have just described the sort of parental experience I have with my twin daughters. It's just heaven.
And you look at the train. I'm not even sure if it's still there.
It is, mate. I saw it this morning.
Is good.
Yeah.
You look at that little train and you think, who would get pleasure from going on the train? Like, it's really tiny.
It goes in a circle. It's brilliant.
It just goes in a circle. It does nothing at all. But every time when you went, you paid 5 cents or something or other, I think it was, for a trip around. And it was just joyful.
Oh, I love it. Now, a question for you. Do you know why it's named Bronte?
No, I don't.
Listen, I'm giving you gold on Five of My Life.
You are just full of information.
It's all the research, mate. So I tell you, why people think it's called Bronte is because of the Bronte sisters. It's got nothing to do with them. It's got nothing to do with the Bronte sisters. That the bay that Bronte, faces onto is called Nelson Bay. And Nelson Bay is named after the British naval commander Lord Nelson. And Lord Nelson in 1799 by the King of Naples was made the first Duke of Bronte.
Of Bronte, okay.
Unbelievable. So it's Bronte Beach in Nelson Bay, all about a bloke called Admiral Lord Nelson. And it's sort of, slightly absurd because bloody hell, the beach and the bay are named after some British naval commander who never even went to Australia, for Christ's sake.
Well, there are a few things in Australia named after.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
After British people who never ever came.
Well, that's it. So it just made me want to ask about your view on ties to England.
I am a Republican. I think that we need an Australian head of state who's born here. Nonetheless, that doesn't mean I don't have respect for the Queen. I think that she's a remarkable woman who, to be monarch for 70 years,
it's incredible.
Is just quite extraordinary. I met her at Buckingham Palace when I went to London for the first ever G20 meeting during the global financial crisis, and we all queued up to meet the Queen and Prince Philip and the other members of the royal family were all there. It was a rather extraordinary gathering there were only, I think, 3 or 4 people from each nation. I was there with Kevin Rudd as the then Prime Minister and Wayne Swan as the Treasurer. And to be in a room at Buckingham Palace with President Obama and the leaders of Medvedev was the Russian. I think back then it might have even been Berlusconi, the Italian, and it was quite an extraordinary gathering.
Wow. I love what you said about, whether people admire her or not. I like the fact that you can talk about an issue in a nuanced way where you go, it is possible to admire a country and not want to be run by it. You haven't got to be idiotically black and white. You go, I'm Republican as well. You go, but that doesn't mean you've got to hate England. You go, just don't want you to be our boss. It's not. Why is it such a difficult concept?
That's exactly right. And I think we in Australia have the oldest continuous civilization on the planet, of course, and we should be really proud of that. As someone in politics, I think the first priority of changing our constitution has to be recognition that history didn't begin in this country in 1788. It goes back at least 65,000 years. Once we've done that, a second order of business is getting an Australian head of state. But that doesn't mean that you abandon your history and your heritage. We are a very successful multicultural nation, and that's why, just another reason why I think we need an Australian head of state who reflects us. But that doesn't mean either that we wouldn't continue to participate in the Commonwealth, for example.
Yeah.
And as other countries do.
Yeah, 100%. I think, well, I was going to say I'm old, but I shouldn't say that because you and I are exactly the same age, mate. But as I've got older, it just is slightly weary-making that people have to be so black and white and absolute. I just don't see what the problem is. You just go, that was then, thank you, we'll take it from here, but we can still be mates. But,
that's right.
But, it's just not a big deal.
We'll still oppose each other when the Ashes are on and all of that.
Now we're going to move to your fifth and final choice, and on Five of My Life, it's usually my favourite of my guests' choices, but in this case, it's my least favourite choice because I put down my dog of 17 years last week, and you have chosen your dog, so you're triggering me, Anthony. So Toto the dog, describe him or her first of all, and tell me the age and the breed.
Well, she's very much a lady, and you can tell that from her eyelashes that get cut into her. She's a cavoodle. She's 6 years old. She is very loving. She doesn't know she's a dog.
Right.
That's the first thing. She thinks that she's a person. And I think when we talk about possession, I'm not sure who the owner is. I think from Toto's perspective, she certainly regards herself as the owner of her humans, and she's just very loving, and the unconditional, enthusiastic love that you get from a pet, but particularly a dog. Like cats are wonderful too, but they tend to be more standoffish. Whereas I open the door and I just get a wonderful, wonderful welcome and whimpering and jumping up, and she's great. She encourages me to go on walks every day, so she's very good for my fitness when I'm around. And she's quite a character. She has Addison's disease, which is what JFK had as well. It's a sort of glands issue. It means she's on steroids, so she's got her little pill box in the fridge that she has to get pills every day, 2 different sorts, and she therefore is, because she's on steroids, she's unbelievably hungry all the time and has lots of energy. So she's 6, but people think when they see her that she's a little puppy. She just has the energy of a puppy.
Oh, I'd love it. Oh, gosh, I love it. Our dear dog had Cushing's disease, which meant that she was uncontrollably hungry. And I reckon she got it from me. I think.
What sort of dog was it?
Oh, little Jack Russell Terrier cross.
Oh, they're fantastic.
Yeah, just gorgeous. God love her. Now, Ricky Gervais, in researching you, I go down lots of rabbit holes and research dogs and blah, blah, blah. And there's a wonderful passage where he is talking about how dogs are basically better than humans and humans are really a little bit rubbish. So it makes me want to ask you, what do you think is the one thing we could learn best from our furry friends?
I think loyalty. You can't beat a dog for loyalty. And I've just finished watching Afterlife.
That was the interview I read when it was around him and the dog in there.
Which is so good because his wife dies and he sleeps with his dog, and his dog and him, he drinks a fair bit and he's depressed about life and he misses his wife. It's devastated him. But the dog, I think, keeps him alive in that show, really. He doesn't sort of ever say that, but it's almost a given. And so he's quite mean from time to time, but only to people who can take it. He's nice to others, strangers who he comes across during the show. It's a wonderful, wonderful show. There's actually a song too that I could have chosen. It's not my favourite song of all time, but I do play it when I DJ, by the Fauves, that I'd encourage you to listen to. Fauves, they were a Melbourne band, but I did notice, like a whole lot of bands that were around a long time ago, I did notice they're playing again. And it's called Dogs Are the Best People. And it's just a great, great song.
Oh, I'm so glad that you've seen that series. I mean, that was one of the ones where I was drawn into a binge rabbit hole. So I couldn't just watch one. I had to see, where is this going? So
Well, they're great because they're just 30-minute episodes, and I think there's only 6 in each series. So you can binge on it, and it has so many wonderful characters, which are very much larger than life. But he is just superb in it, and I'm a big fan of him.
Now, we've got 3 questions for you before we let you go, mate. So the first isn't a question, it's a recommendation. You've recommended a band to me. I'm going to recommend a podcast to you because you mentioned Joy Division's album Unknown Pleasures. So there's a podcast run by my mate called Known Pleasures in honour of that album. So if you are ever bored on a plane and music nut, I think you might enjoy it. So that's just a recommendation. Known Pleasures, pleasure. And 2 questions. So the one is, you've been very warm and open and generous in taking the 5 My Life Challenge, so thank you. So I'm handing you the talking stick now and saying it might be useful in the particular job that you have. If there was one thing you would most like people to know about you, what would it be?
I think that I'm loyal. I'm pretty loyal too. Sometimes against my best interests, but I'm pretty straightforward. Like, I just say what I think. So I have this, shorthand thing I have in my head that I try to do. WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get.
Oh, I like it. I used to work in the corporate world, and once I was in a meeting and someone said, what are we going to do, Nigel? And I said, I think we should tell the truth. And he said, the truth strategy. I mean, it's not a strategy. It's the truth.
Just the truth.
We'll try that one out.
It's funny.
Okay, and the last question, which we ask all of our guests, and I've got a person in mind that I hope you say, but it has to be your authentic choice, is who would you like to hear on 5 of My Life next?
Penny Wong.
Great. I'd love to have Penny Wong take the challenge. We will give her a ring.
She's a good friend of mine, and she's complex and fascinating, but again, pretty, what you see is what you get with Penny as well, I think. And she's such a good human being.
Well, listen, if you are passing her in the corridor, put in a good word for Five of My Life.
I will. I'll pitch up for you.
And you can also say hi to Jackie Lambie, because she recently took the 5 of My Life challenge as well.
I'm not far from Jackie Lambie territory here in Launceston, and she's a very good person as well. We have slightly different political views, but she has my total respect. She's a fellow Houso as well, something we talk about.
Yeah, I love it. Anthony, you've been a dead set legend, mate. Thank you so much. The person I was hoping you were going to say, this is a completely non-political show, I was hoping you were going to say dear old Mr. Morrison, because then we'd have a direct comparison of how the two of you responded to the 5 of My Life challenge. But hey, it's
well, I don't think he'd do it. So
well, he hasn't replied yet, but
it's too unstructured, I think, for Mr. Morrison. But anyway, he might.
But irrespective, you have been an absolute legend. I have really enjoyed, as I know my listeners will, hearing your 5 on the 5 of My Life. So go well, mate. Keep safe, and hope to bump into you one of these days.
Thank you very much. See you down Bronte one day.
Indeed. Cheers for now.
Dogs are the best people. Dogs are the best people.
Thank you for listening to The 5 of My Life, presented by me, Nigel Marsh. Our producer is Mandy Coolan. Theme music is thanks to Darcy Thompson and Matt Nicholish. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please share with a friend. And if there's someone you'd like to hear take the challenge, please message us on the 5 of My Life Instagram page. I love hearing from you and appreciate all your suggestions.